feelings. You hear a lot about emotions and feelings and what they are and why you have to sit with them and why you're responsible for them. There's a lot of stuff about emotions, but first you have to understand what they are, why you struggle with them, and why it's your responsibility. Check it out. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Positivity Experience. It's your girl, Lori. I'm so excited that you are here today. We are halfway through August. Yes, we are. And I know a lot of you are prepping for school and changes and just life in general. So there'll be some stuff coming up on change and accepting change and all of that. You know, we talk a lot about it, and there's going to be multiple different episodes that are going to give you a little bite size of this, a little bite size of that, because at the end of the day, there's always just kind of a base of just a few things that are going to help you reach that next level, right? Nothing is going to be, you're not going to find, for me or anybody else, honestly, 52 groundbreaking episodes of something different. No, you'll find them and they'll have different, you'll see different directions with them, but they're all always going to bring you back to acceptance and all of these other things. So talking about change and emotions and feelings and you being responsible for them is going to be a huge part of this, because radical acceptance is the key. I've already done 2 on radical acceptance. It is a life changer. It is transformational to accept. Transformational. And we talked about that last week. Acceptance and commitment therapy. Because the reality is, and I said this to you last week, I'll say it to you multiple weeks thereafter, regardless of you accepting them the way that they are, it doesn't matter, because they're going to be, right? Things just are. They're not good. They're not bad. They just are. And so then we attach those feelings. And that's what we're talking about today. So let's understand what an emotion is, right? So you think, oh, well, I know what emotions are. Like I talk about them all the time. Like I have emotions, of course. But there's 3 different areas that are going to comprise what an actual emotion is, right? Because nothing's ever just like, this is how I feel. Like, no, that's only one direction. So you have your subjective experience. That's your internal personal experiences. Internal, right? So how you were involved with trauma and how you did all of that, that's an internal feeling out of control, feeling insecure, feeling happy, feeling sad. All of this is an internal subjective experience. So that's one component to it. The other component is your psychological response. This is that where you're sitting there and you're saying, okay, this is the psychological, physical feeling of my heart is racing, my headache, I feel like I'm going to vomit. What is going on? Why do I feel so overwhelmed? Feelings, emotions. So you're having an experience that's not just subjective. You're having one that's psychological, right? And your brain, oh my God, is so powerful. But in my mind, it's not all that smart at times, because it's just like, hey, I guess we got to fight or flight because this seems scary. And of course, your mind and your body connect, but your mind is going to believe what you feed it. I know you've heard that a million times, but it's true. You know, and I've shared this story with you multiple times. I know each one of you have a totally different story, but it's very similar. I had this old stand like in my bedroom growing up as a kid. I swear it looked like a coat rack, but it wasn't. It was like some other tall, thin thing. It had been there ever since I can remember, ever since I can remember. And certain times when my light was off, if light hit it just a certain way, it would look creepy. Like it would look like something's coming after me. Now, mind you, this has been in my room for a million times. I turn on the light. I know it's not what it is. Cool. Great. I turn off the light. I'm a child. I freak out about it. Right. So my brain says, girl, like that's just this stand thing. And my brain goes, I don't know. Maybe this time it's just somebody who's out to get me. So that's my point about your brain is going to believe what you feed it. And that's why mindfulness, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Mindfulness is a master key. Mindset and mindfulness is such a master key to your life. And you hold that control. Like you really do. Just because you have a negative pattern and a negative thought pattern and a negative system doesn't mean that you can't change that. Now, outside of the subjective, outside of the psychological, you also have your behavioral response. All right. I don't know if you've ever sat somewhere, you've thought about a thought, and all of a sudden a smile comes to your face, or you feel stressed out and you just kind of go, oh my God, like your eyes tighten, you take that breath, you can look at your face and say something is off. Well, those are the three components that actually compromise an emotion, right? So there's not just one thing happening, because what that is it's based in thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Thoughts, feeling, and behavior creates emotion. So there's a lot of things that can come into play. And this is where self-awareness is going to come into play. So we're talking about two different things. Well, same thing, but two areas. Emotions, and then why self-awareness is going to be your master key, because so many people aren't aware. When you have lack of self-awareness, this is where you get defensive. Outside of just your ego and manipulation, stuff like that, it still all goes in the same place. If you're lashing out, if you're doing all of these things, you're not in self-awareness at all. Like your emotions are running rampant, and then sometimes you're aware and sometimes you're not, and you're blaming people, and then you're not self-aware. It's everybody else aware. So it goes into this big kind of ball. And that's why you go, oh my God, this is overwhelming. Well, of course. Now, before we go into what your emotions are and why in all of that and how you can kind of guide yourself through it, we are going to talk about this over on Patreon. The Patreon is going to give you an amazing worksheet that's going to help you understand your emotions and your self-awareness. So if you're trying to figure out where to start or you need a little push, I would encourage you to go there, and that's on my Patreon, patreon.com/the positivity experience. It will give you a worksheet, and you will have 4 of those a month to complement these 4 here, and it gives you the worksheet. So it's very, very important. And I also want to talk to you about why we struggle with emotional regulation, but we're going to get to that towards the end, because a lot of what you're going to hear, you're going to be like, well, that sounds great. Like I have a problem doing that. Just because emotional regulation is difficult for you, it doesn't mean that it's unachievable. So important, because everybody, myself included, especially when I was going through a lot of my stuff early on, it kind of becomes overwhelming. These feelings, these emotions are like, oh my God, why can't I control them? Number one is you do not control your emotions. Now, you've heard people say, control your emotions or they'll control you. Yes, to a point. What they're trying to tell you, because people only listen to what it is that they want to hear, or they hear it the way they want, is when you are in that spot, it's not about making your emotions go away. So when people hear control emotions, they think, well, I just want them to go away. Ooh, they're terrible. I don't like them. That's not what that is. Controlling emotions actually means, when they're saying that to you, actually means, okay, let me sit with them. Let me not try to run from them. Oh, it's uncomfortable. Great. Let me sit with it. It's okay that my heart rate's high. It's okay, all of that. I'm just going to sit in my feelings. That's what people resist. And when you're resisting, it's not going to go anywhere. Now, why the hell do we have emotions in the first place? Well, of course, you're a human being. And I've had people say, well, if you're a psychopath or a sociopath, do you have emotions? Yeah, there's still emotions that they have. They have that drive to do that. So that is an emotional response. I think people misconstrue empathy with feelings, because you can still have emotions. Because even though, let's call them the worst people on the planet, they had a glimmer of something halfway decent, and that was based in some level of an emotion. So of course it's very selective, right? And so I think that's the big thing, is when people hear control over emotions, they think they got to go away. That isn't controlling them. That is running from them. So we have them for a multitude of reasons. Survival. I mean, it really is. Okay, so your emotional response, not like you're feeling, but this is emotions. Feelings and emotions are a little different. And your emotional responses, if you're being chased by bears outside, your emotions are going to be like, holy hell, this is scary. We got to get the hell out of here. So your emotions is giving you a positive to be like, hey man, we got to save ourselves. So your emotional response is, let me go into protective mode. Where it is problematic is when you believe that a thought is a fact, because it isn't, and a feeling is a fact, because it is not. And again, not always easy to do. Anxiety, we talked about that anyway. Anxiety, depressions, borderline, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, sometimes ADHD, OCD. All of these other things contribute. We're going to talk about why it's difficult for you. But just because it's difficult doesn't mean that it's impossible. And this is where I think people get caught up, because they're like, oh my God, it's scary. Well, yes, when you have anxiety, you're still trying to outrun your anxiety, which again, we don't outrun anxiety attacks. We sit in them. We sit in the discomfort. If you're not willing to sit in the discomfort and feel it. And it might be an hour, it might be 5 minutes, it might be 5 days, it might be 2 weeks. But you can't control how long that's going to be. All right. Now, it's also, why do we have them? Well, that's how we communicate with our face. Nonverbal communication. So, somebody walks by, you're just smiling, and somebody goes, oh my God, they're in a great mood. Hi. That's nonverbal communication. And you're doing that based on an emotion. Now, listen, a lot of us are not walking around happy-go-lucky with smiles on our face on a 24-hour basis, or we'd be on that haunted movie called Smile. You don't want to do that either. You don't want to be weird. But it is very good for your nonverbal communication. And that's why it's important to lean into your emotions without trying to label them. Labeling them is cool if you're just going to look and say, okay, that's just a thought and it's causing an anxious moment. That's fine because that's an observation, but just don't marry that. Like, don't take that in. So one thing that you can focus on when you're in, let's call it confusion of decision. I call it confusion of decision, where you just are like, oh my God, I cannot make a decision. Go back to the podcast we did a few weeks ago on one decision away from a totally different life. Really important. And you're going to understand why that decision is important. So when you are in decision making and you're like, oh my God, I have to make a decision. It becomes problematic when you're making a decision based in fear, emotions, by the way, these are emotions, versus these are my goals, these are my values, I'm going to make a decision based on that. So when you're dealing with trauma, when you're dealing with other disorders, you're marrying to that negative thought pattern of this is true, catastrophic thinking, rumination, what if it doesn't work, all of these things. So of course your emotions are going to be all over the place. And then your decisions are going to fall short because you're afraid of this or you're afraid of that, or this should be this way. And why isn't it this way? Like, it goes into a whole conglomerate of things. And that's where it becomes problematic in your decision-making process. So emotions are very, very pivotal for that, as well as social connections. Your emotions are really a key in social connections. Now, where it becomes problematic, once again, is you're having a phobia, a social phobia, right? Social anxiety is a very real thing. Oh, by the way, all of these things that we're talking about are never supposed to be judged. Like, don't sit there and go, oh my God, I hate this. Oh my God, I wish I didn't have this. Okay, cool. Let's just sit with it. We don't need to evaluate it. We don't need to try to run from it. We don't need to do any of that. So this is why that's really important for you. So the communication and the social means that you're going to have to be willing to be uncomfortable in your emotion, well, in your feelings, but the feelings are a part of your emotions. And you're going to have to be okay and be uncomfortable with it, because a lot of what you're fearing in a phobia is you have this illusion that you're in control, right? So in a social setting, you're like, well, I am in control. I don't have to go to that party. You're 100% right. You do not. You're right. But then you don't get to say, okay, well, I don't have a social life. You're in control of that. So you're right. You absolutely don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to show up to anything. But if you want it and then you're not taking the action steps, that's dissonance. And then that's where you're having a problem. Okay. Let's call it motivation. I hate the word because it's not real, but okay. Emotions are also very important for motivation and inspiration, because if it is important to you and if you align with it, it is going to feel a sense of joy. So your emotions are going to be like, oh my God, I like this. I feel productive. How many times, seriously, right now listening, how many times have you said to yourself, oh, I feel not motivated, productive. Oh, I feel so productive. I got a few things done, not the whole house, but you did get some things done. You're like, man, I feel kind of good. Sit with that emotion. You feel it. You feel how connected you feel how uplifting it is. You made that decision. Your emotions helped with that. So you're more inclined to follow a goal or to set a goal and to follow through with it when your emotions align with that, which is why when you're in an emotional state, a lot of times that's a feeling state. That's not an emotional state. That's just a part of it. So that's why you don't respond out of, well, that would be a reaction. You don't react out of emotions. You don't react out of anger and frustration. You sit with that feeling of out of control, feeling of I feel invalidated. That's for you to sit with. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And then that's how you're going to get to the next level of your growth. And why the hell do we avoid it? Well, that's easy. Discomfort. Nobody likes to be uncomfortable. But there's no such thing as a comfort zone, and you're never going to grow in the comfort zone. That is a fact. Comfort zone is not even real. You just got used to something. Comfort zone isn't comfort. It's familiarity. That's the word you're looking for. You need to get unfamiliar and stop living in the familiar, because the familiar is what's holding you back. Great. Have that as a base. Have that to make you feel a little safe from time to time. Beautiful. But if you're not willing to go into the discomfort, you're going to have a hard time being healed. You're going to have a hard time getting unstuck. You're going to have a hard time actually living, and you're going to continue just existing, because there's two very different things there. Living and existing are not the same things. And this is where people struggle. They want more, but then you're afraid to face the discomfort. And then the next part of that is fear of vulnerability. Vulnerability is a superpower. Being vulnerable with yourself is such a superpower. You can lean into it and go, okay, this goes into self-awareness too, right? Because self-awareness means you are aware of why you act the way you do. You are aware if you're impulsive, and you are aware to where that comes from. So like let's say you're working with me, you're a client, you're working with somebody else, fine. You're starting to identify where these emotions and feelings are coming from. You're identifying this. Okay, well, it was in the trauma. Okay, well, that's a reason, not excuse. So let's sit with that for a minute. Let's process that. But you got to be self-aware to say, this is me avoiding blank. This is me walking into blank. If you are self-aware, you are connected. Self-aware is not blaming other people. Self-aware is not, okay, well, if I do this, then I'll be super duper happy. That's not self-awareness. That's wishing. Self-awareness is, okay, this is going to take some effort, and this is going to kind of suck, and I might have to be by myself for a long while, and I may have to disconnect from everybody in my entire life, and we may not ever be close again. Self-awareness. So that's why self-awareness and emotions are linked together, because you got to be aware of what your triggers are, both positive and negative, right? And these are important things. Your social conditioning is another reason that you avoid emotions. Oh, well, come on now. There's no crying in baseball. Stop. Oh, men aren't supposed to do that. Come on, get it together. Oh, what are you doing over there? No. So now you have this social conditioning that I'm not supposed to have feelings. And because I'm not supposed to have feelings, now my emotions go, well, I'm at a loss here. I'm at a loss. I don't know where to put this stuff. So your emotions are all janked up because of your feelings. And then also because of your experience and your behaviors. So why would you not feel uncomfortable? Why would you not feel stuck? Because everything is all chaotic and up in the air. So of course it is. But this is why you're avoiding it. This is why you're avoiding your emotions. It's that avoidance. Avoidance is a master key. It's what holding you back. If you keep avoiding it, it doesn't go away. Avoid the conversation. Okay, well, you're the one losing sleep at night. You're the one that's angry. And guess what happens if you keep avoiding? You can have heart problems. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. You can have more emotional problems left and right. Your immune system goes down low, and that is a scientific fact. So why would you allow yourself to resist that? Because it's uncomfortable. Okay, well, now we're just chicken and the egg. Now we're just circling back around. Another reason you don't want to let it go is because of control, right? I'm in control. I don't like this feeling. Well, nobody asks if you like it. Do you want to work in it? Do you want to sit with it? Do you want to understand it? Do you want to go, okay, well, obviously my executive functioning is off. My amygdala is a little out of whack. My dopamine and my serotonin's out. So some of it is like physiological. And then the other is trained behavior. Which is why the mindfulness, possible medication, working cognitively, understanding that you and you alone are responsible for this healing. And that is also where people struggle. They are resistant to this because they wanted to say, this person made me feel, this person did not make you feel anything. They did not stop saying that. You made me feel. No, you did not make me feel. Your actions were hurtful. The actions in which you did were hurtful to me. Not, well, John, you hurt my feelings. No, your actions and your words were hurtful. But it's up to you to process that. Not for John to say, oh my God, I'm so sorry, and coddle you. No. John did not hurt your feelings. John's actions and his words hurt your feelings. They are not the same thing. And that's power. There's power in that. So that's that avoidance, because you're like, well, self-awareness, I don't want to be self-aware and say, okay, well, I was upset because I felt insecure. Oh, Jenny made me feel insecure. No, Jenny didn't make you feel insecure. Jenny highlighted something to you that you have an insecurity about. They are two different things. No one makes you feel insecure. No one does. It's the insecurity that you already have within yourself that is highlighted, which is why a narcissist will scope you out and they will track you down, because there is an insecurity and it is a crack in the foundation, and they can squeeze their way in there and they can compile and give you the love bomb to let you know, oh my God, I love you so much. Okay, by the way, you're kind of shitty without me and you're never going to be well without me because you suck. And so that causes a lot of problems. That's why it works for them. That's why they won't go with somebody who is really into a confidence setting. Why are you responsible for your emotions? This is so important. So many people, I can't tell you the amount of people who want to blame other people for their feelings. And you just can't do that. Again, no one said that you have to put up with them. Nobody said that you can't address it. Just be careful of the "you're making me feel." Your emotions and your feelings are internal. This is an internal process. Internal. John or Jim or Tiffany cannot change your internal process. It is an internal. No one can change that for you. No one can change your mindset, internal process. These are all internal processes. Okay, your autonomy. Your feelings are yours. Your emotions are yours. So when they're all chaotic and you feel out of sorts and discombobbled, that's why it's self-awareness. That's why you work on your breathing. That's why you work on your cognitive restructuring. That's why you're doing all of this. Internal process and autonomy. Accountability. Yes, accountability. Why do we resist things? Oh my God. Accountability. It's easier to blame our childhood than it is to be responsible for us right now. And that was a big, big shift that helped me in my healing. When I accepted that I am accountable for my emotions and my feelings today, I guess back then it was that day, but you know what I mean? You are in control of the acceptance, not control of the emotions per se. You are in control of that acceptance. It is your responsibility. It is you to take accountability. Don't say, well, why did I allow that to happen? Say, okay, looking at that, let me look at what I was hoping to achieve by not accepting it. Okay, that didn't work out. Now let me go forward. What do this is never about victim blaming. Everybody wants to say it is absolutely not. No one is ever invalidating your experience, but it is up to you to work through that. I know it's kind of shitty, because you're like, well, I didn't ask for all of these emotions. I mean, these experiences that now wrecked you're right. You didn't. You're absolutely right. But if you keep living there in that blame, how is that benefiting you? Like, honestly, how is that benefiting you? Nobody's losing sleep over this, but you. You are the one struggling with it. And I think that's the biggest thing for you, is that you're not in a space right now, because that means that you're going to have to be vulnerable. That means you're going to have to be open. It is such an internal process. It has the accountability, and it is empowering as hell. Think about this. If you are in control of processing these emotions, if you are in control of going through this entire process, good, bad, scary, doesn't matter. Who's in control of that? You are. Not them anymore. Not them. Go back to the Letting Go podcast. They're not in control anymore. You resisting the accountability for yourself is keeping them in your present space, and you're taking away any empowerment. Boundaries. Where the hell do you think boundaries comes from? That's why you want to be careful of introducing a boundary based in an emotional state. You're not in an emotional state. Okay, because when you start to get very clear about these impulses, when you start to get very clear about feeling uncomfortable and that physical, remember, we have those 3 areas. So it isn't just like, oh my God, I'm overthinking. This also becomes a very psychological thing. It's physical. You start feeling some kind of way. You're like, oh my God, now I'm out of control. Now it's the chicken and the egg. I thought about this. I had this feeling. Now my thoughts are going crazy. Now I'm in rumination. Now I'm in negativity. Now this cycle is a non-ending thing. But that's what our emotions are. I mean, that's what helps compose us as kind of humans. But listen, there's going to be certain things that are going to make it harder. You have your biological factors. Yep, genetically, it can be a little difficult for you to process your emotions. Yes, you can actually have a genetic component. No, it's not just like, okay, can't process emotions. There's other areas of the brain, the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, all of these houses your emotions. So sometimes you're going to have it, it's going to be out of whack. That's why emotional dysregulation is a thing. Your brain function, right? Like if your brain function isn't wired in a way that it's going to be easier, so to say, for you to process it, it's going to be difficult. Of course. And you could be lacking your neurotransmitters, which is what your dopamine is, your serotonin. Hence the reason antidepressants exist, right? Because depression is real, anxiety is real, all of these things are real, and you have a chemical imbalance. It becomes problematic when you let your emotions and feelings of, I can't do that with a medication, I got to do it on my own. That's also ego, by the way, ego and control. And staying off of Google where you're going to see all these side effects. Well, there's also a side effect of not doing this, and it might be an early death for you. All right. That's just a fact. So you're so worried about a side effect, risk versus reward, risk versus benefit. And you got to really look at it from a non-judgmental, non-fear state, which I know can be hard. I understand. But if you're lacking something, then why would you not do what you need to do to get it replaced? Your attachment styles can become problematic in your emotions. Because again, your brain, while such a smart vehicle, also only believes the gas that you put into it. So it's only smart at certain times, right? So if you're in that state and you're like, I need this person, I need this person, I need this person, that is a telltale sign that you definitely want to get some help. No human being is here for your fulfillment. They're not. They are not. Human beings are not here to make you whole. It is impossible. It is an internal process. So the more that you're holding out on that, the worse that's going to be. And that's why in your attachments, if you have anxious or avoidant attachment, or even a mix of those two, anything but secure attachment is going to become a problem. The rumination and the catastrophe, the catastrophic thinking is also a huge piece of that, right? So again, brain believes what you tell it. Catastrophic. Well, your brain goes, holy shit, we need to go into survival skills here. What is happening? We need to run. So that's why when you're in a negative thinking pattern, it's so important to change those patterns. And yes, you can. I have a podcast on it. It's back there sometime, some episode back there. And it's incredible when you start restructuring those thoughts. But when you are in that rumination, if it's super obsessive, there's a possibility, I'd recommend you talk to your doctor. There is a possibility of something called pure O, which is just the O of obsessive compulsive disorder. Treated the same way though. That's where you'll see antidepressant or sometimes a mood stabilizer along with other coping strategies. It's just going to be what it is that you're open to do and that you believe in doing, and that's going to be it. But when you're in an obsessive loop of negativity, well, you're not going to be able to regulate an emotion where you're like, oh girl, hey, this is just a little simple thing. All right. Now breathing though does help. It will bring you back to base. Mindfulness. But that's some other things that will, interfere with what it is that you got going on. So no one's expecting you to just come right off rip and now suddenly you know how to process your emotions and your emotions are all good and you're okay. But the more you avoid them, the less it's going to be beneficial and the harder it will be. Right? So the more you avoid yourself, the harder it's going to be to find yourself. Now, a lot of times you've avoided yourself because you put everything into people thinking, A, that's what I'm supposed to do. B, this gives me a sense of purpose. What about that is in your emotions. Well, your emotions feel uncomfortable. Your experiences weren't always the best. So there's your experience. And that experience caused some physical and psychological issues, right? In turn, what happens? Well, now your behaviors are going to align accordingly to that. This isn't unchangeable. This isn't like set in stone. It's like, well, you're screwed. This is what you got to deal with for the rest of your life. No, not at all. Mindfulness, I have told you, and I will repeat it a million times, has been scientifically proven and physically proven with brain scans to help manage your emotions along with many other things because you're here now. Healthy lifestyle also helps. You remember serotonin, dopamine, all of those things, which is why you hit the button buy to cart or add to cart. Buy. There's a dopamine hit that you're like, oh yeah, I got that. Yeah, that's what I needed. Of course that's there. That's why you do it. So when you're sitting there and you're saying, okay, well, maybe I'll move my body more. Maybe I'll meditate. Maybe I'll do my 5 journals. Healthy lifestyle. Maybe I'll drink my water. Maybe I'll double up on my water today. Maybe I'll be aware of that. Why? Because it flushes energy. Energy is great. Reframing those negative thoughts. Go back to the cognitive restructuring that I did about 2 months ago. If you're on Patreon, you already have that worksheet. Go back and visit that. And if you're not, that's fine. But just listen to the podcast. These are free. These ones here are free. Why would you not just, and share this with somebody? Maybe you're like, oh my God, my mom has a hard time or my sister has well, just forward this to them so they also have it. And again, it's only going to be as effective as you do the work, right? So I could tell you, give you the holy grail of life, which I don't have, other than the fact that your mindset and mindfulness is a big part of it. Other than that, I mean, you're going to have to try to figure it out. You're going to have to go into it. You know, your emotional awareness is key. What are your shortcomings? What are your strengths? What causes these emotional insecurities? Handle that. Let's live there for a minute. What do you need to do to work on that? What do you need to, solve that feeling of avoidance? That is emotional awareness. If you do not have self-awareness, you're going to stay in this cycle. This is that I need it right away. I need it right away. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Oh, the more information I have, the better it is. I just want to feel better. I just want to feel better. No, there is no, I just want to feel better. Yeah, I mean, that's a thought. But no, you're not just going to feel better. And it isn't going to be fast. This is that emotional regulation. There's an acceptance in vulnerability, an acceptance in the patience part of this that is going to give you that foundational build to understand your emotions, to be able to have a coping strategy, which is the last part of that. What is your coping strategy? Is it taking deep breaths? Is it your EFT tapping? Is it doing your journals? Are you going for a bike ride? Are you going to go for a walk or a quick dip in the pool? Are you going to do a plunge? It doesn't matter what it is. What is your coping strategy? And a coping strategy is not avoidance. That's the exact opposite of a coping strategy. So you do not want to do that because then you're going to live in this cycle and you're just going to spin and spin and spin. And it's going to become a problem. And then you're going to believe your feelings, but your feelings aren't facts. Then your emotions go, oh my God, this is how I'm stuck for the rest of my life. And now I'm going to blame mom because mom was a nightmare and this is what mom did. None of that is about you. What is about you is let me sit in this discomfort. Let me analyze what it is that I'm really seeing that is triggering to me. And let me lean into this trigger so I can see the deep root as to, listen, there was trauma. Trauma's real. Your trauma's very, very real. But don't you think that you deserve to feel better? Now, I did not say want. Do you believe that you deserve to feel better? Do you believe that you are worth your time? Not everybody else's. Everybody wants to be everybody's biggest priority. No, you should always be your first priority and they should always be their first priority. But you're here. Like, you're a constant. You are the only human being that you're going to spend 100% of your life with. The only one in the entire world, entire planet. I don't care how you spin it, how you look at it. So why wouldn't you want to show up for that person? Why wouldn't that person has been waiting for a long freaking time? That person was sitting in neglect from other people. That person didn't have a choice. That person didn't even choose to really, well, you did choose to be here, but you know what I'm saying. You didn't really, but you did. And now you're dealing with somebody else's crap early on. But there's that part of you that you are neglecting. You are just as bad and sometimes worse than the neglect and abuse that somebody put on you because you are not showing up for yourself. You are giving your power away because that's what you've known. That's what's been right. And that's an emotion. Love that part of you. Love it. It's gotten you to where you're here today. It's gotten you through survival. It's gotten you through these things. Okay. Doesn't mean you want it. Doesn't mean it's always great. But babe, you deserve to show up. You deserve to be able to process your emotions. You deserve to feel joy from yourself. Everybody else is just the icing. You're the cake, baby. The cake don't need icing. Might look prettier. Doesn't always taste good. You ever taste icing and you're like, ugh, it's so sugary. It looked pretty on the outside, not so much on the inside. So you're capable of it. You do have the capability. You just got to trust yourself. Your emotions are going to be so new to you when you're like, oh my God, wait, I'm supposed to be stressed out. Things are going halfway decent. You're like, I don't like this. What the hell is this? I'm supposed to feel stressed. You are capable of sitting in your emotions. You are waiting for you. You are allowed to do this. You are deserving of doing this. And the sooner you do that, the more that your emotions are going to align with exactly who and what it is you want to be.